Muy buenas tardes a todos, a todas.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and to everyone who is with us from different places across the world. Today, we are finishing our day with the panel on the implementation of the post-pandemic experiences of Paraguay with the experience of the Technological University of Paraguay. First of all, I would like to greet you on behalf of SICAD OAS. I'm Jimena Kalavsky, and I am in charge of demand reduction. And I am really pleased to see you in this panel today, where we're going to listen to the experience of Paraguay by means of the Technological Intercontinental University in the implementation of professional training in these times of pandemic. The work of Paraguay at this point has been very relevant. They have taken the initiative in this topic, and they have carried out very important pieces of work that we have to disseminate across all the countries and universities that are also participating in the consortium of universities. So today we're going to have 5 speakers who are going to explain and tell us a bit more of how they have carried out this work process with the university. I'm going to tell you about them. First of all, Hugo Ferreira Gonzalez, who is a professional in business management, specialist in education for virtual entourage, doctor in business administration, and he's the director of the Intercontinental Technological University. Then we have Master Minerva Diana, who is a psychologist, and she's a trainer in Colombia Plan International, as well as being a university professor and part of the UTIC diploma at the Intercontinental Technological University, and also head of the Psychology Institute of that university. And then Master Laura Florenciano, who is also a clinical psychology and social worker, and she's also a trainer, and she's also a university professor and director of social reintegration of SENAR. And last but not least, Master Graciela Barreto Castro, who is a specialist in addiction. She's also a specialist in demand reduction at SENAR. She's also a certified trainer of the Plan Colombo and she's also university professor. And also we will have Mr. Andreas Stein, who is a psychologist, doctor, and also has worked supporting the work from SICAD OAS. He has supported the work of Paraguay in this respect. So welcome you, ladies and gentlemen, and I would like to greet everyone who is supporting us today. So I'm going to pass the floor to Mr. Hugo Ferreira Gonzalez. Please go ahead, Mr. Ferreira. Good afternoon. It is a great honor to be with you, and thank you very much for the invite and for the possibility to share with you the rich experience we've had in Paraguay in terms of treatment and higher education before and after the pandemic. I have a series of people, Miss Melva, Master Graciela, Master Laura, and PhD Andreas Stein. So we want to share with you this experience. If you can please read the presentation, that would be great. Or show me the presentation. When there is a second, just give us a second, please, Hugo, because I think we're not seeing the presentation yet.
Mark, we need to Melva to share the presentation. afterwards. Perfecto, muchísimas gracias. Entonces, doctor Hugo Ferreira tiene la palabra.
Bien. Buenas tardes nuevamente.
So, Mr. Hugo Pereira, you have the floor. As I was saying, we are trying to share the experience of the UTIC in the implementation of a universal curriculum for treatment in superior education in Paraguay before and after the pandemic. As Ms. Jimena was introducing, there is a series of speakers who will be with me today. So please go ahead. In human life, we have sometimes the opportunity, we have a second chance. And when that is possible, no one can go back and start anew. But anyone can start today and create a new ending, a better ending than the one you had before. So that's actually our slogan, our motto. What is our context? Paraguay has 54 universities, out of which 8 are public and 46 are private. Is among the private universities, and the university is the first one in terms of the number of degrees it offers. We have 19 degrees. ANEAES is the entity that assesses the education quality in our country. We're going to present you our university. We have 22 campuses, 15 undergraduate programs, and 20 postgraduate programs. At the same time, we have, as part of our context, we have a therapeutic program in collaboration with the Balearic Islands in Spain, and this was born in Italy 35 years ago, and it is growing and growing across Spain and other countries in Europe and now in Latin America with different names. This is called the Proyecto Hombre. So we actually, based on this Proyecto Hombre, we created the Youth Project of Paraguay. So we allowed our students to go to the Balearic Islands in Spain in order to become trained in the treatment and reintegration of people who consume substances. We realized that it was not very easy to carry out this work, so we decided to stay in the prevention area, which is more related to the education programs we have. In the first part of the program, of the project, we carried out the training for students of psychology by means of prevention programs and workshops. We focused, of course, on the strengthening of social abilities, and we also carried out some prevention work in schools, in areas of risk in Asunción and the surrounding areas. We had been doing this in collaboration with the Ministry of Education of Paraguay. Some other antecedents were that in 2014, there was an activity organized by SENAR, and I always thank Dr. Sully for the support of SENAR. And since 2014, we have been working in collaboration with them. And in this work, we have the project named Jugar, which means playing in Spanish. And this was focused on community prevention since 2014, as I said, when there were some floods in the Paraguay River. We were working with families who lost everything due to the floods and who had to be relocated due to that natural disaster. The project lasted 4 months and allowed to accompany and sustain and support families who were affected by this natural disaster. Senat has been the promoter of this project, Jugar, and this has been actually implemented by means of games and other recreational activities entertained with families and with children. The UTIC granted the honoris causa PhD to Sister Regina Cian, who is a religious sister who for more than 40 years worked for supporting people who were presenting any kind of drug abuse with love and compassion, and she changed the lives of humans and different families. So this is why we gave her this doctor's degree. She has been a very humble person who has done a lot for many people and for the community. So this is why we granted her this honoris causa doctor's degree. Can you move to the next slide, please? In 2017, UTIC, together with other universities, signed an agreement with the Inter-American Commission on the Control of Drug Abuse, and we focused on the treatment and prevention in this hemisphere. So this allowed us to focus on a perspective centered around the principles related to science in terms of knowledge, abilities, and competencies that were necessary for treatment. Please go ahead. The scenario that I'm talking about is as follows. We have an increasing consumption, both among youth and women. We also have poly consumers, a high level of codependency, and violence. Because violence is sometimes invisible because there are some hidden statistics that are not taken into account. So this alliance has allowed us to carry out a very important work for prevention and for support for people who are presenting drug abuse. And as a last topic, I have some final considerations. First of all, it has become clear that we need training for action. So we want research to be pragmatic research. We don't want more theory. It's also important to talk about the need for a response based on evidence. Many people carry out activities, but they do not document their activities. So this is why they turn out to be not very relevant, because there's no evidence base. And it is important to act, to take action instead of becoming too worried about things. So this is something we actually take into consideration across the academic field. So we underline the fact of taking action. And for prevention and treatment, we have to make sure that the academic offer revolves around prevention and treatment, and that we can carry out coordinated work that allows the society to liberate from the problems that affect the society, and that we achieve something that can change the society in Paraguay and in the rest of the world. So this is something very important for us. So these are some points that I wanted to give you as regards the context we're seeing in the country.
doctora Melva van a hablar académica en la parte del currículum universal de tratamiento del trastorno de sustancias. Entonces le dejo la palabra a la licenciada.
Now I'm going to pass the floor to Melva, who is going to give us further information about our presentation. Thank you very much, Doctor. So, taking into account what the doctor was telling us, I would like to tell you how the UTC course came about in the UTIC. So the doctor already talked about the agreement we signed with SICAD OAS, and taking into account the reality in the country and the lack of an academic facilities that could offer training and courses on substance consumption for training professionals, we thought of creating something many people were expecting. And first of all, we talk about the training of professors who were already working in universities that signed an agreement with SICAD, and they were actually those who were trained at the beginning in order to train other people. The UTIC team, a team from the university, and in August 2018 they completed the first training stage. This was in the framework of the Colombo plan of SICAD, and this is a group of teachers who accomplished this training. And then they started teaching the same knowledge to other professionals. The UTC diploma course and its beginnings. When these people were trained in August with the support of Graciela Barreto and all the teachers or the professors who were trained, we gathered together in order to present the curriculum. So this lasted one and a half months. So this is a program that was implemented with the support of Laura and Platon. So we sent this project to the Colombo plan and also to SICAD, and we got some feedback back from them. After that, we planned the launch of this diploma course. When this project came back with the feedback of SICAD and the Colombo plan, UTIC took into account all this feedback and finalized the project. Once this was finished, we presented it to the Institute of Psychology of the university, and they forwarded this to the vice director of the university, who are in charge of the academic content. So they look at the content, and this was then sent for the approval by the university. And once it was approved, we launched this diploma course, and we came up with a beautiful surprise. We were ready to receive 20 to 25 students, but actually we got 90 applications. So we had to restructure classes, and we had to divide this into two groups of 45 students. How do we structure this curriculum? It has two modules. Each one has 96 hours. So we have a first phase for modules 96 hours, and then we have phase 2 for modules 96 hours.
Como el éxito fue realmente muy bueno, no solo se desarrolló en la sede de Fernando de la Mora, sino también gente del interior ya empezaban a pedirnos de querer hacer la formación en UTC. Cuando nosotros habilitamos en la sede de Fernando de la Mora, igual tuvimos alumnos que venían
When we started working with Fernando de la Mora,
de aquí de la capital, por ejemplo, de Santa Rosa, de Misiones, de varios lugares, alumnos que venían los viernes para participar de las clases, que duraban de 15 a 18 horas, 3 horas de taller, digamos, de trabajo, de compartir.
I'm sorry, we're having some audio problems with the participant.
Y con esta experiencia nos lanzamos también a llevar al interior el curso con muy buena respuesta también. Se han inscrito en el interior casi 30 participantes.
So we had more than 30 participants for each one of the courses, and we have seen a great response on behalf of the students. We have seen a great level of interest.
¿Qué ocurrió? Que justo en la sede que habíamos iniciado,
What happened? Well, we had just started,
cuando llega el tiempo de
and we were about to finish the diploma course.
todo lo que es el tema de la pandemia.
And when the pandemic started.
En nuestra primera fase del
So we can say that the first phase of the diploma in the Fernando de la Mora
la parte presencial,
campus
pero también
was very,
a la virtualidad.
very successful. And well, due to the pandemic, we had to adapt to the virtual world. We could not stop, so we actually had to adapt to this new normal. And this is when we started to understand all the surprises and all the benefits of the virtual world. We didn't have many tools before, so actually the pandemic got us closer to different work strategies that were really good and very useful. So I am going to talk about the other benefits of being active in the virtual world. So as I was saying, the first phase was face-to-face one, but then the second one was a virtual one. Was there a level of resistance? Of course there was resistance. Some people wanted the pandemic to be over before they would go back to the course. Imagine, we would have never finished any of the 2 courses if we had waited for this new normal to be over. So what did we have to learn with this virtual modality? Well, actually we could connect to other people in other countries, as Professor Graciela, Professor Laura, Professor Carlos was there. They already mentioned that they started inviting other colleagues from other countries and allow them to be in their classes. We actually had some professionals from the PAHO, people from UNAM, Mexico, and the classes were actually very enriching. This wouldn't have been possible in face-to-face classes or lessons. So actually, students had access to new methodologies of work, to new techniques, and we wanted to have a virtual graduation. So this was the first experience we had. I mean, having a virtual graduation was something new to us, and you can see how successful it was. You can see all the number of students, and seeing all this amount of participants was amazing. This was really wonderful because some of them were very motivated throughout the course, And you could see the happiness of having accomplished, having graduated, and having accomplished this new piece of training. And the feeling of acquiring new knowledge and graduating from a course is something amazing. So you could see that in their faces. This experience was really interesting. So this is all about the experience of UTIC in terms of virtual classes. Now, Professor Laura is going to talk about the profile of these students. Good afternoon. We're talking about our good practices, and as a matter of fact, this was very hard work, but we have the satisfaction to say that these are good practices because we actually learned them and we implemented this very successfully. I would like to talk about the profile of people who were part of this diploma course. We had nurses, dentists, people who were focusing on business management. So we had a high level of demand and interest. And the amount of participants, as my colleague said, was very beneficial because they are actually working already on the field and they take this immediately to their areas of work. So sometimes these people transmit this knowledge as in the shape of conferences and or classes or lessons. So working with SICAD and the Colombo plan was of great help because due to the virtual modality, we could access new knowledge and the university became more open. We're talking about a health problem, so this is of great help. It is of great help to have access to other realities, and it was important to find new ways of following treatment and offering treatment in our country as well. Next slide, please. Why do we say we have a high level of need in our country? Well, because we see more and more young people who are becoming consumers. I think the problem of alcohol consumption in Paraguay is really high. And of course, this leads consumers to use other drugs. We have also an increase in the consumption among women, and there is a high level of use in the interior of the country, outside of the capital, and you see a high level of dependency. It is important. It is very impressive to see the amount of destroyed families due to drug consumption. So it is very important to think of therapeutic solutions. All these data were extracted from the National Center for the Prevention and Control of Addictions, which is the only center who has a program for this, and they understand how this attention can be provided in the best way. This is why we want to make sure that our colleagues in the area of health provision can be best trained and provide services in the best way possible. So there are mothers who say, okay, my son has tried drugs once or twice and they want to send them to rehab already without understanding how this addiction process works and what underlies the whole addiction situation. So it is important to share the messages and to the right populations, and also let them know or raise awareness on the types of treatments that are adequate for one type of users or the other. Who participated in our program? Well, we had more women in our diploma course. We had different people who had an undergraduate level, other people who had postgraduate level, but we also had mothers who had children with consumption problems. We had professors who are in contact with high-risk young people, also people who live in areas in shanty towns where people are highly vulnerable to drug abuse, and people from across the country, not only from Asunción, the capital, but also from the interior of the country, who were very eager to learn. 51% of people who subscribed to this course finished the diploma. Next slide. What's next? So I know that Graciela and Adriana are going to give you more data, but what do we have now? We have a consolidated group. We have 2 groups of communication. We are carrying out some workshops, and I mean, it is important to see what this diploma course left behind. It left a high level of interest, many challenges, many possibilities for expanding and increasing our activity. So we have to intensify our activity, our teaching, and we are very thankful for the support of SICAD in this endeavor. There are some counselors who are already working, who keep on training, and some people are going to do their apprenticeship in the center we have opened for treatment. And the course was very, very useful. We already had a list of counselors, and we can send them directly to the areas where they come from so that they can provide the services directly there. So what we want is to decentralize the attention that is normally provided in Asunción, and we want to send counselors out in the provinces of the country in order to provide services as needed in areas that are more remotely located. And these people have the capacity to determine what kind of treatment is more adequate for an individual in that moment of their lives. Well, this is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much for the space. Thank you, Jimena. Thank you, ICUDDR, because we're actually walking and we keep on working, and we want to expand our knowledge and to restate the conviction we have that we have to keep on working, and that we have a lot to do. Well, thank you very much. And now I pass the floor to Professor Graciela. Well, thank you very much, Professor Laura. I would like to start by thanking Jimena. What an honor for me to be able to see you in this presentation of this piece of work. Hugo Ferreira, Professor, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to collaborate with the university. Andrea, we showed you some proposals. We do not have much evidence-based work, and you trusted us, and these are outrageous projects. So actually, we have received a lot of support, and we are yet to see results. We are also awaiting for the results in order to present these to our authorities in the university. But we're very happy and very optimistic. This work has been allowing us to also run a follow-up activity on the trained individuals and trained professionals with the support of the Colombo Plan and SICAD OAS. with Senat already. Also, when we are when a group finishes or accomplishes their training, what is the impact of the training? What happened with them? Where are they? What are they doing? So we have all these questions once a course is over, and that's what the professors ask themselves too. And this is when we think, okay, can we go on with this work, and can students tell us virtually where they are? So actually we talked to the students, and we actually got some answers from them. We worked on implementation with techniques, with activities. We know that as teachers, we do our best. And this also, this was a great challenge for the institution. And in the next slide, which is what I want to talk to you about, we can see the relevance of an impact assessment, or at least a follow-up of our students. The university has that modality. However, the fact of having the possibility of doing this in partnership with other institutions is something that doesn't happen very often. So it is important to know how to position this within the academic authorities, then how to get some support from external institutions. There is a level of management of on different fronts that we have to get used to, and this was new to us. It is important to position this as an activity of high impact, and in order to have arguments to receive budget. So the relevance of assessment was part of the academic agenda, and today we have this possibility in order to justify our work. In the next slide, I would like to tell you, because I want to give some time for Andreas to show us the results. So I would like to talk about the basic criteria for this assessment. So we wanted to go further and talk about the impact measurement in terms of the training of UTC students at UTIC, and that's where we want to get. By means of this process, we want to measure the effects of this training. We had the academic capacity to carry out this process, and this was a step-by-step process. We could apply new knowledge in the context of new workshops. And please show me next slide. We had 4 modules that were very important. The first module guides the trainers step by step. Then we have a master agenda where we know what to measure, what to assess. Then we have the formulation of the assessment, both the assessment of the module and also general assessment and the assessment of trainers. And then at last, the training modules. So I think after the whole work we carried out, we should very respectfully think of including a follow-up module and also a module of impact in order to have the possibility in this module 5 in the context of the Colombo plan to contribute from this small country of 7 million inhabitants, where we actually need to work strong and hard based on scientific evidence for the possibility of having a 5th module for follow-up and to contribute to the needs of society.
Digamos, el cómo hacerlo, allí definitivamente el tema de
when we talk about how to do this, we can talk about agreements both with the Senad has always promoted these types of trainings.
El trabajar con programas, avanzar hacia los programas en la posibilidad que tenemos.
It is important to think of working with different types of programs, so it is important to know how we're going to manage the partnerships. And I can tell you with all the knowledge and certainty that there are very few universities that undertake promoting the issue of training in the areas of prevention and treatment. This has been a long and harsh process from the very onset. There are other universities that we are supporting for the possibility of sustaining these training courses. However, there is hard work in order to put this into place. Also, in terms of technical considerations. So it is important to continue working, and there we saw the possibility of working with questionnaire with different goals, and to have a very specific and very specific look at what we're doing and how it has an impact on the context of students, and whether the trainings we're offering are actually improving the situation of treatment. Well, that's what we want to focus on. Thank you very much for the opportunity, for being able to present this in this scenario. Thank you very much to SICAD OAS for allowing us this chance to show this impact analysis exercise, which is just incipient, but will keep on being refined and perfection. Thank you very much, Jimena, for your great support for demand reduction across all scenarios. Now I'm going to pass the floor to Andrea Haynes.
¿Aló?
Perfecto. Sí.
Sí, ¿qué pasa, por favor?
¿Vas a compartir pantalla, Andreas? Andreas, tienes la palabra.
Andreas, you have the floor. I'm really sorry. They called me right when I was about to start. So I'm going to share my screen.
Listo. Bueno, muy buenas tardes. Bueno, quería darle muchas gracias al equipo.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for. Thank you very much to the whole team from Paraguay. We have known each other for so many years. But it's sometimes weird that we don't have a common opportunity to speak on this kind of events. So I have been working on this for 4 years now, and it's really nice to see how this is going to end or how it is progressing. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to appreciate that fact. So I will now talk about what we have been talking with the professor and the whole team from Paraguay. This question that we have in Paraguay, what happens after this type of interventions are done? How can we help other people to replicate the knowledge that they have acquired? We understand that we have a big gap in existence, and sometimes these gaps last for decades. And in Paraguay, I have to acknowledge that the efforts that we have carried out and some others before us have worked really hard to make this gap shorter. And it is great to see you all and to work with you. So what I will be presenting today, it's a quick follow-up survey that we did in order to understand what happened with this trainer program. So, as mentioned before, with this State Department sponsored program that we have been trying to implement in terms of evidence-based efforts, and how can we do this type of programs so that in the future we can have better results. And this will definitely have an impact with people. And one of the models that we have used is the train-the-trainer model, which essentially means a cascading effort. So maybe a group of 25 can train 25 more, and so on. And in this way, we can create a cascading effect so that knowledge is actually being transmitted and replicated, and it's not only left to the books. So one of the strategies that we created here in Paraguay, which is one of the main missions that I had to work in, was to create a group of 22 people where we found members of university and members of Senat. And we did this technological transfer course, which has already been explained in terms of how it works and the technology involved. And in this way, we also supported the efforts of certification. So there were some tests that were applied so that they can demonstrate their competence. And then we were really happy to see that this group had started their own diploma to teach this in turn. So we have been using this model, which is it starts on the top with the global or regional trainers. Then we have the institutions. Those trainers go to institutions by means of the creation of courses, diplomas, and then it is cascading down to the workforce. Now, what happens with the evaluation? So sometimes we are quite restricted in terms of the immediate or short evaluations, because these are evaluations that assess immediate acquired knowledge. So in general, UTC, UPC courses aim to go a little further, which has these pre-post tests that we all have to endure, that they're not so terrible, but we all know how it feels to have to take a pre-test and a post-test. And we rarely go beyond that. So in this cascading model that I mentioned before, it is important to understand how everything that we learn is actually implemented in an effective way, and how this implementation of new practices in the workplace are actually resulting in improvements. So we can see how we can leap from step 2 to 3. So in step 2, we have to understand what are the profiles for new strategies, but then we don't know what happens afterwards. So the big question here was, are we really transferring knowledge for practice? So this is one of the first studies in Latin America around this specific issue. And this is what I will be talking about right now. So in every step that we take, it is less probable that things are actually implemented. So in the first level, there's a reaction, second level learning, third level behavior, and level 4 is results. So if we can cascade and increase these levels of results, will be in itself a big plus. So the participants of this training, the first question here was, are these participants being able to apply what they have learned? Whether this training, the question was whether this training was actually having an impact in how they perform. So this training really needs to contribute to their employability and their performance so that they can place themselves better in the workforce. Likewise, what barriers and enablers have they found? So, coming from university and from the university to practice, what are the difficulties that they have found? Because other than what we can teach them in the university, we can't control the other barriers. So it is important for us to understand whether in this step it is important for them to have a specific support so that this transfer of knowledge is actually achieved. So these were the main questions of the survey. We designed a study, retrospective, cross-cutting, and descriptive study. These instruments were a survey with closed-ended questions and open-ended questions. We collected the data with Google Forms from 12th to the 19th of July. The rate of response is 34% so far. This survey is still open. And for the general standards of response rates, we usually get 20-something percent. We have so far have a 34% response rate. The sample that we were able to gather maintains approximately the same ratio of the gender and education groups, and we tend to get more responses from those people that finished the course versus those who didn't. So 50% of the population were not able to finish the course, and we have a 74% of people that actually responded to the survey, which is atypical in this type of follow-up. Now, this is a breakdown of the participants. We have mainly women in the group. We have an age range of 30 to 40, mostly from the capital city, mostly Paraguayan nationals. 20-30% of the sample has a university degree, or some of them have actually been employed. Most of them were psychologists. I am also a psychologist. And also we see other areas. There's a theologian, managers, among others. And 35% of them report being part of a self-help group. Most of them have 1 to 5 years of experience. However, there was a big percentage of them that had no experience at all. This is normal at the beginning, but this is evidence also to the fact that those who are attracted to this type of programs are those who have a little bit of experience or that are considering to enter the workforce at some point in the future. Now, let's talk about the diploma itself. From this specific sample, 75% of the population completes the diploma. And the main reasons why some of them don't finish that are related to family reasons, economic reasons, and health, of course. This is something that usually happens when this was implemented online. These are some of the reasons they provide for not finishing the course. Basically, family, economic reasons are the ones that are the main factors that are roadblocks for completion. In this case, we're asking, regardless of the fact that whether you finished or not, 95% of them consider the diploma to be useful or very useful, which is a very good number. So this is quite interesting. And something that I would like to know, that we would like to know more, and this is part of the strategy that we are trying to implement, is who are we really reaching? And how are we facing this knowledge and implementing in the workplace? Here, for example, we can see the work hours. Most of them work 10 hours or less a week, and most of them dedicates this type of hours. So we're talking about a partial work day, and this type of work is usually in organizations and private consultations. However, they normally work also in public or in both in private and public organizations. So it could be a private consultation or also in private consultation offices. 61% of them works in certain programs that deal with 20 users or less a week. So our focus here is mainly in this way, outpatient situation, and 20 users a week usually. The three main substances that these participants report that they get clients is because there is a situation with marijuana, alcohol, cocaine, crack, and tobacco. So these are the main problems that these participants come in or report having to work with. And more than 25% have one or more substances together. Now, as part of this scenario, we need to understand what are the changes in the workplace, because we see that they report as part of this survey many different things, and we were able to break down the main changes. So we identified 5 main changes. So the first one was in case management, treatment, the incoming and evaluation, organizational practices, and finally ethical decisions. All of these are issues that are discussed in a cross-cutting fashion throughout the course. Now, in terms of evaluation, of course, we will be sharing this presentation, and I'm not expecting you to read and to understand the whole of this graph, but these are basically organized in pairs, right? So blue bars are those practices that they have mentioned that have been implemented before, and the intervention, and the red is the areas in which they have implemented certain practices because they have learned it in the diploma program. So we see that prior to the training, only 7% were implementing this type of therapy, and after the training, 69% they have applied this structured assessment. We also ask them about extension of active search of patients, whether they did structured evaluations, whether they were implementing structured methods, instruments like SIS, and they evaluate whether they have concurrent treatments and other strategies. So as we can see, the main changes here have to do with the introduction of brief introduction to the therapy, and the recovery of capital was part of the comprehensive measures of how to deal with these cases and how to identify treatment. We can also underline the reduction of strategies for
stigma, for dealing with stigma. And the most important thing is that the most relevant things that I consider good things for treatment are counseling, global and family counseling, also motivation-oriented interviews and therapy, psychoeducation, and also a greater consideration of the participation of users in decision-making as regards treatment. All these concepts are very well considered in the material and in the manual, so I think it is very important to underline this fact. As regards the case management practices, we find that in all indicators we see an increase. The greatest changes are in the post-graduation monitoring, assessment, and addressing the barriers and obstacles in access to services, and also defense or advocacy for users to access treatment and thus manage recovery. Organization development practices are very important, and they're also considered across different indicators. We also underline the introduction of protocols for also different protocols and monitoring of graduate participants, also the active monitoring of retention or permanence, also strategies for documentation, which is like a depository of information that is very relevant during the treatment. And we also establish self-care and training for the team. And this is also based on the materials that they have been granted that are based on the universal treatment courses. And at last, the practices that regard ethics, well, it is important to underline the introduction of protocols for decision-making, for ethical decision-making. And this is something we see across the strategy, and ethical decision-making is of great importance. Now, to wrap up, if we want to be more specific, we can look at the different changes we observed in terms of different strategies, case management, management of the organization, and also ethical analysis. And this is something very important to consider in case management and also in organizational development. These are the last slides, and it is important to see how this impacted the nature of their work. And people were asked whether they agreed or not. So we asked them if their hours of work had increased, if their income had increased, if their responsibilities had increased, if their opportunities were better, if they had greater confidence and more motivation. So we see there is a tendency to increase the hours of work, the responsibilities, also a higher level of trust in their own work. Maybe in the area of an increase in income, we're not doing so well. We see people who totally disagreed, so they have more work, but they do not have the right compensation for the extra work. So that's something to take into account. It would be very important in the future to consider how we can incorporate the need for organizations to acknowledge the need for increasing their economic compensation for their work. Main barriers and facilitators or enablers. The most important thing had to do with the professional equipment or professional teams, because at times the teams were not properly trained. So there were teams which showed signs of burnout or low resistance. Also, there was a lack of support resources for families. And this is something relevant that emerged from the analysis we run in terms of the obstacles found. And the last point is difficulty in accessing clinical supervision. So we identified the need to implement this in a better way, and the need to have some sort of support in order to follow up on this clinical work. The main enablers, well, when people can work with a team and people from the same institution can be trained in the same curriculum, because coordination is easier in that way. All of them said that the contents of the course were very valuable and that contributed to their professional and work development. Accessing clinical supervision or someone to consult was something people considered being an enabler, also having community support and especially support within the organization. Many people managed to implement strategies before COVID. This is why we saw really good results, but it is important to underline that two things happened with COVID. There was a dramatic rise in the demand. There was also an interruption of services. So there was a high demand and there was an interruption of services provided. There was a restriction to follow up, and there were no places to refer people in case they needed any kind of support or attention or care. There were many people who quit treatment because there was a high level of resistance for receiving treatment online. In order to close, I would like to mention that the report suggests that new practices of work have been implemented. In spite of the effects of COVID-19, we observed the materialization of changes across all of the indicators we measured, especially in terms of case management and organizational development. The conditions of employability changed. There were greater opportunities, more hours of work, and less income. That's something we can underline. And one of the main barriers mentioned is the difficulty to interact with other internal counterparts and also external ones who do not share the same training, the same level of training. And also people talked about lack of time and resources in order to expand the activities of training. And the fact that they acknowledged this made our work easier. And also the need to deepen or delve into into training and having access to clinical supervision was reported. And this would be of great support for the implementation of the clinical abilities for working. We have some limitations. We have a retrospective study and a self-report one, and we do believe that all of the courses will have a baseline like this, and we can work based on that baseline and understand how the implementation is expanding and how the implementation of all this learning is happening, and this can, of course, inform our future work. It is important to say that this will be of great interest to Paraguay, and well, in the future we will see how we move forward with the implementation by means of some observation strategy. Well, this is what I can tell you about this, and thank you very much for your attention.
Muchísimas gracias. No sé, Graciela, si quieres
Thank you.
comentar, creo que los
Graciela,
datos
maybe you
presentados
want to
ayer
add something as regards the data Andreas presented. These are very interesting and very challenging ones. Well, as a matter of fact, we have a very interesting assessment of the whole work we carried out in this process. And we actually see this has had an effect. Andreas, you scared us because this only comes with a greater level of commitment. Clinical follow-up is something that we were told needed some accompaniment and some actual follow-up in order to raise the level of efficiency. That on the one hand, and on the other, if we consider that we need lines for assessment and follow-up of students in order to have the possibility to measure the quality of our interventions, is something the university is interested in doing, because that gives us a new ways of seeing things. And I think this plan not only provided tools, but also new ways of looking at the work from a human rights perspective and the human rights perspective of consumers. And I think that's the greatest contribution of this work, in addition to creating a network of professionals and advisors. And we consider that these people could be also recognized by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry for Social Welfare, which is something Senat is carrying out at this moment in order to have a record of advisors and counselors. And this is also thanks to the academic field work we have carried out. So, Andres, we will be needing your support, also the support of SICAD. I need to mention Andrea Escobar and Mr. Alfonso, who were also very supportive for us to continue this path. There are many professors who are implementing activities, and they also had the same questions. That is this of use at all? And how can we cooperate at the territorial level in order to run interventions? And we have some indicators that all our efforts were worth it. So, Jimena, I can tell you from here, representing my colleagues, thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you, Graciela. Maybe we can answer a question or comments from our audience today. But if it's not the case, maybe any of you would like to add some final remarks. Elva, you look like you want to participate. What do you think of these results? Well, as Graciela said, and Andreas was presenting, this is very interesting. This is a very interesting result. We have a lot of research to do, and it is important to deepen into this study. And this is an echo of what UTIC Paraguay means. We saw there was a change in treatment, how to work with families, with the person who is consuming. There has been a radical change in our country, and from the university I would like to thank SICAD Colombo Plan, because from the onset they were working hand in hand with us, and Andreas told us there was a fourth stage, and he gave us that challenge. So we actually have a team to manage that. And I would like to thank Dr. Ferreira for always having given us the freedom to work on the things we feel passionate about. And this is a proof that UTIC is committed to the society, to its country, to the youth, to the families. I would also like to thank Andres Escobar, Mr. Abarca. Thank you very much, Andreas, for your helping hand and for staying with us in this new stage. We have a lot to do, and I think we have a lot to do, but we are here in order to work as a team, as a university. And thank you to all our partners at Senat, Laura, Graciela. Without them, this wouldn't be what it is today. Thank you very much. I think there are many faces we cannot see at this moment who are also part of our team. So thank you to each one of them. Thank you to all of our graduates who are triggering change across our country. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone. Thank you, Melva. Dr. Ferreira, maybe you would like to give your last remarks before we close the session.
In reality, this has been a very good experience, very relevant for our country and for Latin America in general. I think this was really, really interesting. So thank you very much for allowing for this type of experience. I believe that this has been an eye-opener in terms of how to understand the problems and in order to propose better solutions to improve the quality of life of our citizens, because when they know where to direct their own life without the interferences that might be interfering with their capacity to develop their talents, every country will fare much better. So at this time where the threats are just around the corner, I believe that this prevention and training efforts for those professionals that are intervening in all of these models and all of the professionals that are working on relevant research are also a critical part of this. And it's important to not only focus on the theory of things, but to move towards a hands-on commitment from the professional side and the recipients of our efforts, because this is built by everyone, not only by a person or a family that has a problem. This is a commitment by the whole Paraguayan society. I would like to thank everyone who has been part of this project at any point in time. Thank you, Jimena. Thank you, the director of Senad. Thank you, Ms. Graciela. Thank you very much, Andrea, for supporting all of these efforts, because it is always important to appreciate the perspective of external person, because they possess a specific type of knowledge that takes us out from our comfort zone and allow us to understand how they perceive our country. So when a foreigner comes in and looks to our country and wants to provide an outlook on what their perspective is, I believe there's value in that. So I think that all of those efforts have created a very nice working community, and this has helped us to have a better programs to support the people that need them the most. So thank you very much, and I hope that many more countries in Latin America decide to do this as well. Thank you very much for those comments. Now, I would like to thank Sena Barreto, Sena Gomez, Hugo Ferreira. Thank you very much for your comments, for all the different challenges that you have also explained today to everyone. And also thank you very much for opening the door to everyone that were connected to this session, because there is a lot of work to be done in terms of connecting civil society and the professional environment for better plans and better programs. So if we don't have any more comments or questions, we can wrap up this session, and I invite everyone to join all the other available sessions. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we'll see each other again soon. Thank you very much.